Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Brown, I wanted to start with you just to talk through and build off of some of what was talked about. The Strategic Active Pharmaceutical Ingredient Reserve, it was created as a pharmaceutical equivalent in many ways to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to reduce supply disruptions of key pharmaceutical ingredients. However, instead of financing it to maintain nearly 2 years' worth of supply and incentivizing private industry to incorporate it into a means to wean off of reliance on overseas supply, it's sitting right now in the single digits in capacity. So I guess, Mr. Brown, I just want to ask you, are there ways that we can use the DPA to more effectively leverage this reserve to reduce supply chain disruptions and drug shortages in the short term?
Yeah, Senator, I think this is an important point of how we can modernize and even look at what we used to use the DPA for, which is for stockpiling and reserves. As you mentioned, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was also authorized under the DPA. And so as Congress looks ahead to a possible reauthorization and modernization of the Act, I do think this is one of those subjects that could be relooked at with an eye towards how we handled the Cold War with future 21st century threats in mind. I will also add that, as has been mentioned by my colleague, there is some discussion around the cap that is on the DPA Title III fund. This is, to me, largely an appropriations and budgeting issue, and so working closely with the appropriators on this issue is an important initiative.
Thank you. Dr. Doshi, I wanted to just talk about how critical biotech is, for instance, not only for innovation competitiveness, but also for our defense-related products. DoD launched the Distributed Bioindustrial Manufacturing Program last year, which supports private industry and develops commercial-scale facilities that fortify defense supply chains. This targets high-risk components of the military supply chain that could be alternatively produced through biomanufacturing, such as rocket propellant, jet fuel, et cetera. Without direction from DoD, the private sector will not build commercial-scale biomanufacturing infrastructure for defense-related products. So I find this to be an important effort. I guess I just wanted to ask you on this front, can you speak to why DPA funding for this is important and whether the administration and Congress are doing what's necessary to ensure this continues?
Well, thank you, Senator Kim. I'd start by saying that DPA Title III funding has been used, as was referenced earlier in the hearing, to expand industries critical to American national security, including nascent developed. We used DPA Title III in the past to stand up some of our semiconductor capacity and invest in new innovative industries. I think the same is true for biotechnology. So I think you could imagine using DPA Title III to build more capacity in this space. The second point I'd make is that many of the inputs in the biotech sector, whether that's animal models or reagents or enzymes or expensive equipment, a lot of that is imported from China today. And so if there were an escalation in the trade war, you might need DPA Title III, for example, or Title I in some cases, to be able to ensure that we could expand production of those critical inputs or prioritize contracts for government and national security purposes under Title I. So there's a lot of ways in which I think DPA is critical to supporting this sector, which is now a sector at the heart of competition.
Yeah, thank you. And we talked earlier about the challenges when it comes to critical minerals, especially vis-a-vis the PRC. And part of the reason that the PRC commands such a large share of the critical minerals market is that they treat the supply like a faucet. They turn it on, they flood the market with cheap commodities. Once the competitors run out of the market, they can turn the faucet down. Prices stabilize. It's basically utilizing these kind of non-market policies to be able to mobilize. And it's something that shows that building new mines is not enough. We need to ensure that they can continue to operate even when the PRC floods the market. So, Mr. Doshi, can you just give us a little bit of a sense of how we should be using the DPA to counter these particular non-market policies to ensure our investment at home do not go to waste?
Well, Senator Kim, I think this is a critical point, and we heard a little bit about this in the context of antimony already, which is a very good case study of the PRC restricting a critical mineral and DPA stepping in to ensure adequate capacity. But here's the broader point. Every time we get close to having our own production, our own refining, our own stockpile of these kinds of critical minerals, the PRC drops the price. And that's where DPA is going to be needed to prevent market manipulation.
Ms. Lyon, do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Senator.
Yeah, I just think that that's something, hopefully, again, we can hone in on and just kind of understand and see the different ways it can be used. And with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Senator Kim. Before we hear from Senator Ricketts, I wanted to